Thanks for joining us now. Is Brian Lanza, senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign. Brian, you were obviously part of President-elect Trump's first transition team. I'm wondering what you're hearing about the team that's being put together now. What do we know?
First of all, thank you, Anderson, for having me on. Listen, we're attracting the best and the brightest this country has. I think the transition team has done a good job, sort of staying behind the scenes in the last couple of months and sort of gathering a list of people who want to work in the administration, who want to serve this country in a positive way. And now we're going through the process of reviewing that, doing the necessary background searches we have. We're excited to have so many people excited to be part of this administration and unifying the country. So I think what you're going to see from this transition, is going to be a unified front. And President Trump and Kamala Harris spoke a little bit earlier. It was a very gracious phone call that the vice president gave, and the president was very clear. She thought she ran a strong campaign, and she was very tenacious in the process. She also mentioned she wanted to work with the president to unify the country. So I think from the transition, who wants to display a unified front, and also from the relationship that he has with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, we're looking to have a unified relationship with the country in January.
There are documents that the president-elect needs to sign to unlock transition activities so that the Trump administration can kind of hit the ground running. Do you know if President-elect Trump has signed those yet? Because I understand there were several deadlines that his team had skipped.
Yeah, listen, those are sort of the technical processes of transition. Our understanding is that they're not legally required to be signed, but they're in negotiations. They're having conversations. They're looking forward to finalizing a memorandum of understanding. But let's be clear, Anderson, it's not a legal requirement for the campaign or the transition to sign anything with the government. We're working and cooperating in unison to make sure we cross the necessary thresholds so that our people can be briefed properly with national security background information, and so that we can hit the ground running. But let's be clear, it is not a legal requirement to sign a memorandum of understanding with the government for this transition.
I remember when George W. Bush was elected and talked about the mandate that he had. This is probably as close to a sweeping mandate as a president-elect could have asked for. Having control of both the Senate, potentially, it seems, on the way to have control of keeping control of the House as well. What do you expect to see in the first 100 days?
Listen, it's very much a mandate for common sense. What we expect to see for the first 100 days is people focused on affordability. The American people want to do something with respect to affordability. They've been wiped out. They've suffered tremendously through the policies of the previous administration, and we're going to focus on that. We're also going to focus on securing the border. That's very common sense to the common people. They want to understand, a country that's so welcoming of immigration. Why are people breaking our laws to get here? And more importantly, why is our government not doing anything about it? So as we go forward with this common sense mandate that we have, we're going to be addressing the issues that we talked about at campaign in a straightforward way. But we're also going to make sure that the American people understand. We understand their priorities. We appreciate their vote, and we're going to go forward in a common sense approach with the mandate to make sure that we hit everything right. That the promises the president made are kept.
There were, obviously, the former president, the president-elect, ran on this idea of mass deportations. There were people at the Republican convention holding up signs that were printed out for that. Do you know what is the plan for that?
Well, let's be clear when we talk about this mass deportation, it has to do with illegal aliens. We're not doing anything with legal residents or people who are here legally. It's people who are here illegally is going to be the approach with mass deportation. Now, we've always said it, the president has said it before, there's going to be a staged process. There's going to be a phase in. The easiest people to target are the criminals, the people who here have committed violent crimes illegally that are still here. That's going to be step one. And once we sort of understand once we understand how step one moves forward, we'll move to the next layer. But let's be clear to the American people, we are going to deport illegal aliens who've broken our laws and who've been violent to our people.
Anderson, as we mentioned at the top, President Biden and President-elect Trump also spoke today. We learned that Mr. Biden will address the nation tomorrow. CNN's Kayla Tausche is at the White House for us. First, Kayla, what do we expect to hear from the president tomorrow? And what did you hear about the conversation he had not only with Donald Trump, but of course with his vice president?
Well, the conversations were very brief. They were very high level. A White House official said that President Biden congratulated the vice president on what he described as a historic campaign. And as for the conversation with now President-elect Donald Trump, President Biden talked about being a president for all people and ushering in a peaceful transition of power. And those are some of the themes that we're expecting President Biden to touch on tomorrow when he delivers this address. Despite some of the more piercing rhetoric from the campaign trail in recent weeks, we expect the president to talk about how he was a president for all people, and he expects Donald Trump to be the same, how he will uphold democracy, which is, of course, one of the core pillars of what he ran on protecting back in 2020 and frequently revisited throughout the course of the last 4 years. Now, clearly, it is not a bittersweet moment for President Biden. It is expected to be quite bitter as he delivers this address in a race he believed that he could have won. Whether that there's any tinge of that in his remarks, we don't expect there to be. We expect him to be on script and speaking at a high level, but of course we'll see when he actually delivers them, Dana.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of alluded to this. This is obviously a fraught dynamic here because President Biden, as you said, still believed that he could have beaten Donald Trump. He was sort of unceremoniously removed, even though he said he did it on his own. What are you hearing from his advisors about what's going on there behind the scenes?
Well, Dana, there are three schools of thought that have sort of emerged in the light of day after the results have come in, and not just come in, but shown a landslide and decisive victory of sorts for Biden's predecessor that he really ran a campaign directly against. And those three schools of thoughts are as follows. The first is perhaps Biden should have just remained the candidate. He had that strong coalition in the blue wall of white working class voters that helped tip the race to his favor in 2020 and that carried Donald Trump in 2016. Perhaps he would have been able to carry that out. Then there's the school of thought that perhaps blame should be placed on former President Barack Obama for anointing Hillary Clinton in 2016 and to Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, who effectively pushed Biden out of the race this time around, with aides saying that, it was essentially the party's most powerful that told Biden that he needed to step aside. They said that any other Democrat could beat Donald Trump, and clearly they say that was not the case. And then there's a final school of thought that is perhaps they just didn't fully grasp just how unpopular President Biden was. They believed that the data would eventually play out in voter sentiment, that President Biden's approval rating did not accurately reflect how people actually felt on the ground. But Dana, as we know, voters are never wrong. They have this opportunity to speak their mind, to cast their ballots and show where their priorities are. And that is the source of a lot of reckoning for the Biden team in the light of day.